You ever wondered how elections down under are different from those in the US? Elections are the heartbeat of democracy, but the way that they're run can be seen as different as a kangaroo in a tuxedo. So whether you're a political nerd or just want to know how we choose our leaders without a barbecue brawl, stick around.
You better take cover.
The United States and Australia are in many cases just like the same sides of the Democratic coin. But our electoral systems have some quirky differences that do make them very unique. Do you think you know more about American elections or Australian elections? Maybe you've heard that in Australia voting is compulsory, but what about the rest? Are you aware that the US has a very different approach to campaigning and advertising? Let's check it out. In the United States, the electoral system is like a game of musical chairs. Only one candidate gets to sit down with all of the electoral votes in a state. It's a winner-takes-all approach, meaning the candidate with the most votes snags all of that state's electoral votes, except for Maine and Nebraska, which decided to play by their own rules. The US rolls with an Electoral College system, where each state gets a set number of electoral votes based on its population. Kind of like a popularity contest where some states have more friends than others. Australia takes a different approach with its preferential voting system, letting voters rank candidates in order of their preference. In that respect, it's like choosing your favourite ice cream flavours. If your top pick doesn't win, you still have a chance to enjoy your second or third choice. This method often leads to more representative outcomes, making sure everyone's voice gets a scoop of ice cream. One major difference between the two countries is the way that voting is conducted. In the US, voting is not compulsory, and voter turnout can vary greatly from one election to another. In Australia, on the other hand, voting is mandatory, and citizens who fail to vote may face penalties, including a fine for not casting your ballot. It's very common to see a bride on her way to church stopping by, dress and all, to have her say on who gets into the lodge. This results in significantly higher voter turnout rates in Australia compared to the US. In the 2024 US election, 65% of registered voters chose their pick for the top job, whereas Australian elections typically run in the 90% range of turnout. Australian elections are held on a Saturday, which also helps to get people to the polling booth, whereas election day in the US is on a Tuesday. And it's a trend that dates back to 1845 to help those living in rural areas finish church on Sunday and then have time to make their way to their county seat to cast their ballot. Australia also has a little cultural icon that's called the democracy sausage, with alerts even going out to let you know which polling booth has the best selection. When it comes to political parties, both countries have essentially a two-party system, but the parties themselves are quite different. In the US, the Democratic and Republican parties dominate the political landscape, while in Australia, the Liberal and Labor parties are the main players. If we were to roughly compare them, the Liberals are like the Republicans and Labor is likened to the Democrats. At least that's how it traditionally used to be. Australia's two parties have become so much like each other at times that it's really hard to see any difference. Minor parties in the US really play no part in governance, whereas in Australia, parties like the Greens or One Nation will at times hold the balance of power, with the leading major party needing to make a deal with them to form government. Candidate selection processes also vary between the two countries. In the US, candidates are typically chosen through a series of primaries and caucuses, where party members select their preferred candidate. In Australia, candidates are selected by their parties through a more opaque process. This also means that the party can replace a sitting Prime Minister, as has occurred multiple times between 2010 and 2018, in a way making a mockery of the role and the whole process. Another major difference is the role of money in politics. US elections are infamous for their sky-high campaign costs and the heavy influence of special interest groups. In a way, it's like a high-stakes poker game where the chips just keep piling up. In contrast, Australia has much stricter campaign finance laws, and the government steps in to provide funding for candidates, making it, in most cases, a fairer playing field. In the 2019 election, Australian political parties spent around $295 million, whereas the US went all out, splurging over $9 billion. Talk about a budget blowout. Australia's electoral system has a unique twist with its above-the-line voting option, allowing voters to cast their ballot for a party instead of individual candidates. Kind of like picking a team instead of just one player. This feature has led to some fascinating outcomes, giving independents and minor parties a chance to shine and gain significant influence. The actual casting of a vote is also different. Australia uniformly uses a paper ballot and pencil, whereas votes can also be cast using a machine that punches holes in a ballot or even a fill-in bubble sheet in the US. It's also not just about who runs the country. US voters will quite often see ballot propositions to vote on, like the 2016 Proposition 60 in California, which asked should adult entertainers be forced to wear condoms in pornographic films. Incidentally, that one was voted against. Despite our differences, both Australia and the US have their unique election traditions. In the US, the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary are highly anticipated events, whereas in Australia, the election day celebrations and compulsory voting system make for a fascinating spectacle. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think about the differences between Australian and American elections? Have you had any experiences with voting in either country? Reflecting on these differences, it's clear that both countries have their own strengths and weaknesses when it comes to electoral systems. The US system allows for a lot of individual freedom and expression, but sometimes results in low voter turnout. Australia's compulsory voting system ensures a high participation rate, but it can also lead to uninformed voting. So the next time you're watching an election, keep in mind the unique characteristics that shape the outcome, the insane amount of money that goes into it, and get yourself registered. So that way you can have your voice. Hooroo, mateys.